Oh, you have to start.
If you want me to, I can give the brief intro.
Go ahead.
So the multifamily property that is at 855 Lake Street, I think lots of times people will recognize it as it used to have the red telephone booth in front of it. It has been vacant. It was privately purchased from a private seller, and the developer has gone through the building permitting process. The level of renovation and rehabilitation under the village's code do not require the installation of the elevator. But one of the conversations and part of the reason they did request the financial assistance is that there are benefits to the installation of the elevator. There is a very small vintage elevator in there that's kind of the one-person model. It didn't lend itself for individuals with disabilities really to utilize that and live in the building. And so part of the conversation at the EDC was that there's obviously always benefits to the fire department to having the elevator so that they're not necessarily using chairs and other things to move people in and out that need medical treatment. But the idea that individuals with disabilities really have full access to the building, and it did have the affordability component. So the EDC is here tonight, and John Lynch can certainly talk about that group's recommendation, and also Tammy Grossman is here from staff and can answer any questions you have. And I know Chief Epson is here as well in case you did have questions from the fire department aspect.
Okay.
I have questions.
You have questions for
Tammy,
Tammy?
is that my 3 minutes up? So, maybe, so first of all, the unit mix is what? It's 20% affordable under, so it's 13 units for people who are
60, there's 60. I also want to
60
introduce the developer, Eamon Cahill from Icon Clark is here too, so he
Thank
can
you.
answer it.
Yeah, I
Any
have
questions as
for him,
well.
too. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything more than that? I thought I read there's like a 60 or some other percent affordable.
Well, so the unit rental amount is affordable to people at a lower income level generally, but then in addition, the developer is agreeing to specifically rent 20% of the units to income qualified people. He's getting assistance through the Chicago or the Community Investment Corporation, CIC, and they have a 15-year requirement associated with any funds that they give to the developer, and so we were matching their requirement for the 20% income qualified units within the building.
Okay, so my question is, if we don't fund this elevator, these units are going to be affordable one way or the other? Because they have to be, right?
Right.
Okay, that's my decision right there.
Okay.
I personally don't believe that I don't believe that we should use affordable housing funds that aren't necessary to create affordable housing. And I think this project already does create affordable housing. So if this to me is no different than a developer doesn't make their pro forma coming to the village and just asking for money, because the affordable housing fund is specific to creating affordable units. So if there's another vehicle, if this person needs assistance, like a loan program or something else, I would support.
You're shaking your head. You want the developer.
Yeah, because in this write-up, it says what Tammy just said, that they're already going to have these units. And first of all, I want to thank you. I do want to thank you for building affordable units in Oak Park. And I know that it takes a lot of different types of financing that you've secured and that all have to do with affordable housing.
So the only thing I will say is that the village manager is correct in that not only is the elevator a fire safety issue, but it's also a livability issue. And so given the thinness of the budget related to the project, you're correct in that CIC is funding it. They will not fund the addition of the elevator in the back. So without a full cab elevator, it's not as accessible. The building is not as accessible as it would be with that elevator, and it also helps improve the safety of the residents within the building. So there is a benefit that the village is obtaining by paying the purchase price for the elevator, in addition to also making the units, accessible to people, to low-income people. And I'll let Eamon talk.
And I'm sorry. So there was really two issues that the fire department raised as a life and safety issue, and both of these were brought up after we had received the permit and begun the demolition and the process of rehabbing the building. And to the fire chief's credit, he he was very passionate and very eloquent about it in these meetings, and basically insisted on that life safety take priority. So what we had to do was not just to put in a new elevator in the back to allow the fire department to have a injured person on a gurney flat. But we also took down, or we will be taking down, the existing rear fire escape and rebuilding that in a fully enclosed, fireproof additional exit. So the handshake, so to speak, that we entered into with the village is that we would take on that rear staircase out of our equity, so to speak, because it was the right thing to do. That was an approximate cost of $240,000 that was never budgeted in the original plan submitted to the village. But we also said, look, if we're doing this, maybe we can do the elevator as well, because it really both match, both complement each other, both increase life and safety benefits more than just one alone. And that was when we asked for assistance, and here we are today.
Okay, I do have a question. I just want to make sure, what I don't like is a historic problem if we have this problem here, where we issue a building permit and the building department issues a building permit and the fire department says, wait, that's not.
That is not what happened.
Okay.
But again, it's very similar to the situation with community builders, for example. The village also used $500,000 as part of the funding source for the community builders, and they had additional funding from Illinois Housing Development Association through the LIHTC program. So without that additional funding, it makes those projects develop harder. And affordable housing developments have all kinds of layers of financing. But this is a situation where we believe that the benefit to the building to have the elevator is a benefit to the village in that it makes it easier for the fire department, but it's also an extreme benefit to the residents who are going to be living in the building, because right now the existing elevator is super, super tiny. One person comfortably fits into the elevator. I've been in the elevator. I wouldn't want to be in it with more than myself in the elevator, but this will allow them to have wheelchair access and be able to access the building. So that's why staff feel strongly that this is a good use of the affordable housing funds.
Okay,
All right,
Arthur,
I
go
do
ahead.
have one last question. I think I figured this out this morning, but this limit, the amount of money that we have left in the fund has taken into account all of our previous commitments, right?
Correct.
Okay. So I guess just generally, this is a tough call because I think people need to live in safe and dignified environments. I think it'd been better if we did this in the beginning, where we said, here's a project and we're going to contribute this much to this project, rather than the feeling that someone can't make it and they come to us and say, can I just have money, right? Like if we had done the RFP and this was part of the RFP and we said yes to this and just.
I don't disagree with you on that. I think in this situation, though, as we were moving through the development of the building, of reviewing the project and having conversations with the fire department, it became apparent to us that the best solution to the problem was to add the exterior cab to the building. But again, they had already pulled the building permits, and so when we got involved in the project is when they submitted the building permit application. This project hasn't come to you for any type of variance or any type of review whatsoever. The developer really wanted to start the building permits, and so we couldn't, there was no reason to hold them up, so we wanted to hold them up, but yet still try to work on a solution that would be beneficial to the residents. And I also think it's the right thing to do for the community because it makes this building
Thank you, Tammy.
accessible.
Arthur, you have questions?
I just have a couple of comments on this one. The first is that when we keep on saying this is affordable, this is market rate affordable housing. This is not affordable units that have been set aside. And in the OPEDC's letter that they provided, they did state that ICON's investment they're committing to keep 20% of the units affordable to renters at or below 50% of AMI for at least 15 years. So there's no guarantee that it can remain affordable without any restrictions, given that, we have Albion and all of those large developments on Lake Street. What happens after the 15 years is up? are they still going to be affordable? So that's my first point, that we can keep on saying that this is affordable housing, and in a sense, yes, it is, but this is not affordable housing. Like, the village has failed to define what affordable housing really means. When we talk about using the Affordable Housing Fund, are we using it specifically to fund the development of affordable units, or are we using it for extraneous purposes like this? Secondly, the grant request is for $260,000, and according to records currently, the Affordable Housing Fund may have somewhere around $382,000. Is that correct? Because it's not, the problem with the Affordable Housing Fund is that it's not in any way like listed on the actual budget. So how much does it actually have in it right now?
That number is correct, but you do have another development that is proposing to contribute an additional $500,000 to the fund, so we do anticipate future contributions to the fund.
So currently, we would be spending 68% of the current funds on this project.
I don't know what the percentage is, but the numbers are correct.
Yeah, and we would be spending 68% of that current housing fund on a project that really fails to secure dedicated affordable units, in my opinion. And so for that reason, I don't agree. Like, I agree with Simone here that people should have safe, livable, and accessible homes, but we are using funds dedicated for affordable housing for building an elevator in a building, and I don't agree with that purpose.
Thank you, Artie.
Can I just respond for
I
a
wanna
second?
go
I have
on.
a solution.
Can I? go
Yeah,
ahead. Go
okay.
ahead.
So I'm looking at the actual agreement, and what it says, I think we have when I read the agreement, it helps me, because the write-up makes it sound like we're paying for an elevator, but the agreement actually is connected to the unit. So section 3.1 of the agreement, it ties it to maintaining the units as affordable. But I think, for me, I would like to see a slight change. Right now, it says grantee must notify the village when the development reaches 90% initial occupancy and certify to the village thereafter that 20% of the units located at the development are affordable to renters at or below 50. And if we secured it, it would be 20% of the units located at the development are affordable to and rented by households earning at or below 50.
So what would you like to do?
I'd like to amend the agreement under section 3.1 to change that sentence from what I just said, 20% of the units located at the development are affordable to renters at or below, to say 20% of the units located at the development are affordable to and rented by households earning.
And if they amend that, would you support it?
Yes, with one other just
Okay.
suggestion, which is that the last section of this paragraph, I just think you're talking about getting into a wrangling if you ever have lawyers try and decipher what this sentence means,
Sure.
which is grantee shall immediately pay over to the village upon written demand, this is if they don't do it, an amount equal to the grant amount of $260,000 multiplied by, and then it says, a fraction of the numerator of which is the number of remaining amounts of the term divided by 180. And I bet you we could all try and come up with what that means, and we'd come up with different things.
All right, so, well, it's a
So I would
mathematical
just
issue.
suggest-
So would you be okay to that amendment to get trustee with that support? I'd like to know if that from you. Would you? Okay, thank you.
And just change that last thing to something that sounds more like the number of months remaining. Paul, do something
Yeah.
with that last sentence.
All right.
It's kind of, it's just the.
Repeat
Can you summarize?
Okay, so the way the math problem, essentially the way this is if the units aren't rented at affordably, right? And they don't certify that 90% of the units are rented by people who are 50% or below, then we have a recall.
All right, change that.
And the math problem says the amount that they pay back, the written demand to the village, an amount equal to the grant amount of $260,000 multiplied by a fraction of the numerator of which is the number of remaining amounts of the term divided by
Lawyers.
180.
All right, you're going to change
It's
that,
just
right?
prorating it,
Okay.
and
Yeah,
so
it's
we
prorating it, but
can,
just
we
needs
can write it different to
like
say, but it's just
something-
prorating something if they
I
are in
want you to
default of
make
the
her
number
happy.
of
Could you
units
go back to
rented.
your first amendment, the first thing that you said on the
First-
20%? So
Is that-
where
Is
it goes
affordable.
into 20% of the units, but you made a slight language change in that sentence.
Right.
Is
okay.
affordable.
The second is, no, it already says says it's affordable, which that means that your kid can move in because they like small units and they feel like.
Please take my kid.
Cheap, right? But it should be that the units are, 20% of the units located at the development are affordable to and rented by, which means someone has to income qualify the people.
Agreed?
Could you come to the podium so you're on the TV?
You probably have to do that for your
Okay,
other
good.
loans, right?
He agrees.
Who's going to do that, income qualification?
We do. We have to then certify that in an annual report to
Your funders?
and to our funders.
Okay, thank you.
Then I'm comfortable.
All right. It's 10 o'clock, guys. Let's get our comments in and let's get
So we'll
out.
talk fast.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I'm definitely in support of this. If I were, well, first of all, I want to thank the developer for coming into Oak Park and sinking so much money, investing so much money into this building. 58 of the 64 units are studios. This provides a very unique type of housing in a very advantageous location, and it's fortunate for the village that we have someone that's willing to renovate and bring life and residents to a building that I would say is one of the top 3 buildings that residents want to see back on the market, thriving, and thank you for doing that. Now, with these funds, we have an opportunity to make this building livable for the residents that are going to be there. If we don't give these funds, if we don't give this grant, the building's going to proceed, and the residents who will live there in perpetuity are going to have a single-person elevator, and the quality of their life is going to be substantially less than it will be if there is an elevator. They'll also be able to participate in the services that municipal government offers. So, we talk about our most vulnerable residents, many of which will be in this building, and we're providing them with something that will allow them to access the services that we provide as municipal government. So I'm fully in favor of this, and I think it's a great use of the funds.
Thank you, sir. Jim?
So I just want to say a couple of comments. I strongly support affordable housing in Oak Park. I want, as everyone else here does, accessible, safe, and affordable units in downtown Oak Park, and this provides them. This is what we're here for. It is like the community builder situation. The support of the affordable housing is now directly connected to the benefit of the elevator. So I think it's a great way to use the Affordable Housing Fund, and I strongly support it. Thank you.
Sir. Dino?
What's the mechanism, like, let's say 5 years down the road, the building gets sold. Do our requirements carry over to the next owner?
Yeah, this agreement is a lien on the property, so it's recorded and it goes with the property.
Okay. All right, I just have a couple of comments. I think there's really strong arguments on both sides of this. I am definitely in favor of access for people who live there. I think it's a really good investment. It's an investment that I wish the developer would make regardless of the outcome of this vote. I'm not thrilled about the 15-year limit. I would like to see that limit be in perpetuity. And if that limit isn't in perpetuity, I would like to see the $260,000 be returned to the village. I think it's fair because if we use this money to put in an elevator, it's going to immediately increase the value of the building, and that is an asset that will stay with the building in perpetuity. And I think that what we're giving up should be compensated with something that lives in perpetuity, or at least as long as the life of the elevator. So I don't know what the appetite of my colleagues are, but I would like to see the 20% commitment made in perpetuity, or if the building is ever sold, or at some point, if that perpetuity ends, that we get reimbursed for the elevator.
Thanks, Dino. Susan, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I do. I think that's a great idea. I had a question about the cost of the elevator. Somebody mentioned it should be able to hold a gurney lying flat. Now, there are many high-rise buildings that don't have elevators that hold a gurney lying flat. So I assume that increases the cost of this, and were bids made for this 260? Is that how they came up with the 260? And could it be cheaper if it did not hold a gurney lying flat?
So think the request for the gurney lying flat is from the fire department, so.
No, I think it's in the fire
It's in
code,
the fire
actually, if you.
code.
Yeah, we would just be following the code requirements, and that's standard for for a full-size elevator. I don't know about the bid process, but I'm sure when you looked into it, then.
I think based upon the last time the village updated the building codes and specifically the fire code is when the requirement changed for the size of elevators to accommodate gurneys. So you certainly see buildings that are non-compliant, and the only times they have to change that is based upon the percent of rehab that's done. And so then I think.
So you're saying now the code is presently that new buildings have to have elevators that hold a flat gurney?
Yes. So I believe that was adopted by the village board around 2014, 16. Yeah. It's been that way since that point in time. So new construction since that time has been that, or it's rehabilitation. I don't know, Chief, if you recall, it has to be like over 50%, and major demolition. It's a little bit confusing on when it's required in a rehab situation.
And how was the 260 determined?
We could ask the developer how the pricing for the 260, I believe, is based on some bid estimates.
We drew up preliminary plans and obtained various estimates from the tradesmen that would be involved. And I might add, it's not just the elevator. There's a shaft, electronics, everything else that comes with it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
And this question Dino had is that I didn't understand that answer by our attorney about if we pay for this and then for some reason the units are not provided, what's our guarantee?
So the agreement is recorded with the county, and it's a lien on the property which can be foreclosed. So if you've heard of a foreclosure action, we can file a foreclosure action on the property to recover whatever money is owed. Yeah.
All right, Vicky, take
So
the roll.
it's not just a grant, hold on and on, I know it's late. So it's not just a grant with no strings attached.
That's correct.
All right.
So I have a question in this. So again, I go back to what is the definition of affordable? So when I look at the breakdown of units, 58, so all but 6 of the units that are being built in this building are studio apartments. And studio apartments, by their very nature, because they're studio apartments, are generally cheaper to rent than, say, the 4 one-bedroom apartments or the 2 two-bedroom apartments that are being offered in this building. And so when we say that 20% of the units shall be affordable to renters at or below 50% AMI, how are we defining affordability? Is it that it's, again, in perpetuity, as Dino suggested, or is it for the 15-year lifespan? And then after that, if rents wanted to increase, we wouldn't know what the definition is. And so I feel like the definition of affordability needs to be defined in this contract.
I think there's charts that HUD comes up with based on the number of family members.
Right, but that's not defined here in this specific contract here.
Defined in his other contract.
It's, yeah, I mean,
All right,
I
Vicky,
get.
take the roll.
Trustee Walker Piticola.
It doesn't matter. Let's just finish this through. I mean, these
Yeah.
are
Everybody made their comments.
not everybody made their comments. I'm not done commenting.
We're in the middle of discussing this.
Yeah, let's see it through. See if a liquor item.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you.
Make
No,
your
no,
comments.
but I
So
think.
can we
I
get an
think
answer to the question?
What I'm not concerned about, what Arthi just said, is because I think that this whole area, the AMI, is kind of defined, right, Tammy?
Yes.
And that it has to do with how many like if you have 2 people in your family, it's different, and that's a bigger unit, and it's different rent.
So the way the affordability standards are set forth is they look at number of people in the household. They determine the AMI. So for a single person in a household is $31,000 a year. Then HUD sets the rent of what is affordable to a one-person household earning $31,000 a year, and that's the maximum rent that Mr. Cahill can charge for that unit. And the 15-year requirement is extremely common in all affordable housing financing tools that are through the state. Some state programs are 30 years, but the majority of programs, affordable housing requirements are 15 years. And that's what the Community Investment Corporation's requirements are for their loan is 15 years. They give out loans all across the city. So the 15 years is not uncommon in terms of the limits.
All right, anybody else has comments? Go ahead.
But could Paul confirm whether we could do something like Dino suggested, and if so, I want to hear what other trustees think about it.
It's really up to the board, so yes.
I'm not in favor of in perpetuity because when I think about things that we do in perpetuity, I think of things that are almost like when we put in a water tank or something that we really need forever. And I think with these things, perpetuity is the year 2350, right? I think I'm comfortable knowing that this building with these units is going to be affordable. It's probably going to stay affordable because of the size, but I think that also the concept is that the perfect being the enemy of the good. Like if we want to go to the maximum ideal of everything and make it so perfect, we're forgetting there's some practical realities behind things. And I think this practical reality is this is the 15-year thing that is industry standard. And what I like about this project, and it's a lot of conflicting things about how it came to us, but what I like is that it's affordable in the downtown area, which we get a lot of requests for affordable units that are in the same area or close to the same area with the same benefits as our high rises. So that leans heavily in my thinking on this, and I'm comfortable, especially because it doesn't say the payment is for the elevator and the payment is for the affordable units in the agreement.
Cool.
I'd love to just counter a couple of points. One, it is highly desirable to have the affordable housing in the downtown area, which is why I don't want to see a 15-year limit on it. Two, the in perpetuity isn't necessarily designed to guarantee that there's affordable housing there forever. The guarantee is that if the affordable housing component ends in the 16th year, that the village can get its asset back, which is the capital that we're outlaying to build a very nice elevator that will immediately add that value onto the building. So for me, it's more about protecting our investment. And if the affordable housing changes, then we can get that investment back instead of having it just be, here's 260 grand and we get 15 years of benefit. And then the developer just has that amount on the profit margin after 15 years if they decide to sell, which I don't think.
There has to be some amortization schedule.
But no, it doesn't have to amortize at all. Like we're giving an asset. That elevator will live on, that elevator shaft could live on 100 years, maybe more. And if that's an investment that we're making for the affordable housing, I think that affordable housing should live on as long as that elevator is working, or we should get our investment back. I think it's just protecting all the money that we've worked so hard to get into the fund and all the money that all the money that's going to come into the fund from future developments. I think we need to make very good investments that hedge our bets. Yeah. That's just my feeling. So
I agree with Dino here, and I'm happy to amend the motion to include that. I also think that, if I would be so much more in favor of this if it was like 58 1 or 2 bedroom apartments and not 58 studio apartments, because these aren't apartments that families really can live in. These are usually single people are living in these apartments. And so it's not like we're creating affordable housing for families. I mean, when I first moved here as a single mom, I moved in a studio apartment but it was me and my kid. And so I would be so much more in favor of this if we were creating affordable housing that actually families could live in, but this is largely studio apartments, but I'm happy to
How does that
it.
amendment affect what you're doing? Can you tell me on how does that impact?
There's a certain value, the $260,000 versus a 15-year term for the affordable housing. To extend that 15-year term or to make it perpetual would basically not allow me to move forward with this.
Thank you.
Can I say something too? The building kind of is what it is, right? It was a dump before. It was really bad. We had struggles with it. The owner was bad, and it was a disaster. And somebody died and all that stuff, right? So I think what we're talking about is someone that's got a very small pro forma, right? We've got the write-up that it's dicey as it is. And so if you have to reconfigure the whole building to make bigger units, then this whole thing falls apart, right? So I think we have to think about, we're getting what we want in general of affordable units close to the downtown. And I think that a big bad part about the way this came down is that it sounds like we're paying for an elevator, but the document says we're paying for affordable housing. So
And you changed
we're
that,
not,
so we're good.
yeah, and we're not amortizing the cost of an elevator as much as we're funding a building that's going to be affordable. And the way that there's got to be some time that they get to keep it. This 3.1, we all need to read and look at, that it says the way that we're funding this is that they have to maintain their units as affordable for 15 years, and they pay us back for any time that doesn't happen. So
Okay.
that's the mechanism of the recapture.
I would be willing to compromise my position to gain my support.
Okay.
I would be, as much as I would like perpetuity, it would gain my support if we had 25 years of affordable housing at that level.
Okay, well,
It's the only thing that we can do to guarantee that this next generation is going to have affordable housing on Lake Street in this project. And given the 60% AMI versus 50% AMI, I know this building used to be a hotel back in the day. It's really hard to make 1- and 2-bedroom apartments out of there. I know that there's like some structural issues that make these units small. But I would be willing to support that 25 years.
okay, so, go ahead, Jim.
In terms of the term, I'm comfortable with the 15 years. I don't think it's easy for a board to negotiate at the table with the developer as he's sitting here and try to get better terms out of him. I trust staff has negotiated this and worked this in probably the most efficient way possible, and I'm willing to move forward, and I'd like to take a vote as it is.
All right, take the roll.
Okay, are we just agreeing to the language amended as, with a suggestion of the
Yes,
language
yeah, I
I
agree
said?
to it, yeah.
Okay, all
So we're
right.
not even going to ask a developer if he's willing to go 25?
He said he would do it. Not the 25.
We have to amend the
Okay.
motion
Take the
to
roll,
include
please,
school.
on the
Hang on.
motion
Move
as
to
is.
amend
Not, we have to
I'm going
amend
to take
the-
the roll on the motion as is.
But no, we have to include the language that
She
Simone.
has the language,
Okay,
she
it's
can work
okay.
it out.
I'm moving to amend the motion, I think I made it, to say that to approve the funding grant agreement between the Village of Oak Park and Icon Clark LLC, condition on the amendment of the second sentence of section 3.1 to read, the grantee must notify the village when the development reaches 90% initial occupancy and certify to the village thereafter annually that 20% of the units located at the development are affordable to and rented by households earning at or below 50% area median income, and then the rest of the sentence.
So we have to amend our
He's fine
motion.
with that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we have to amend
Right.
the motion that's on the table.
I just moved to amend it.
Whoever
That's
made
what
the
you
motion,
said.
and then whoever's second is, if they're okay with that
It's a language
amendment,
issue.
then it's done.
I mean, I think it was, what,
Yeah.
us? Okay,
Yes.
so I'm
Yeah.
fine amending it with
Yes, so
Simone.
am I.
Okay, cool, all right.
Okay, Trustee Walker Pitacotla.
No.
Trustee Andrews.
No.
What?
Trustee Boutet.
Yes.
Trustee Buchanan.
Yes.
Trustee Moroni.
Yes.
Trustee Taglia.
Yes.
Mayor Abutsalev.
Yes. Okay, I am going to leave, and Simone is going to finish up the meeting.